almost 20 plus in the secondary school. My question is, considering you have that funding gap, what is the predictable expectation of teachers or head teachers in terms of supporting that education which you almost call free? And I believe it is not free. Actually, nothing is free in our country. Thank you, Speaker.
MP for Marakwet West, did you put in your...
On the issue of TIG funds?
Something else?
Yes.
Okay. The MP for Funyula, Oundo, and Chematien.
No, it's okay, Speaker, for this.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Chematien?
Not in terms of money, in terms of quality, is what is hindering this country. You realize most of the learners come out of the school who are half-baked, and most of them are almost deleted because of the quality we give. Have a problem in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kasim, MP Kasim.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now that the CS has admitted, and it's not only this financial year, even in the previous financial years we've been having gaps, why don't we remove this word free? Because to most parents, when the CS says there is free, and he knows very well that there is a funding gap, some parents literally refuse to pay their balances. You give them a bursary this term, after the end, once that money is, they come back to you. They don't do anything because education is free. Why don't we be realistic, yes, and say from today henceforth, it's not free, so that even the parents can prepare to pay? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes. Yeah, Keses. MP for Keses.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was wondering, you are calling me Keses. I am a member of Parliament for Keses constituency.
Yes, I said MP for Keses.
Thank you. In line with this free discussion of free primary, there is a project that are being run now by the ministry in preparation for senior secondary education after JSS, the twin laboratories. Mr. Speaker, I would wish the CS to clarify the procedure of identification, because what we are getting on the ground is purely distortion, in the sense that the real needy schools have been left out. Number two, the criteria in line of allocations, because you get some constituencies are getting even 1 or 2 or at least 4, others are getting even more than 10. Number three, why are these things being done so silently, even in the absence of the knowledge of members of Parliament, who happens to be struggling with the issue of allocating, even pushing the allocation of even CDF to support the same, so that at the end of the day, you might find duplication. Why? What is the interest behind this silent, under-carpet work being pushed by the ministry? What is the interest behind it? Why not being done open, yet it is public resources? And what I mean by public is public. NGCDF is public, it is done to public participation. Why this one of ministry being undertaken, done undercover? Thank you.
Honorable Wako Naomi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In line with the same free education, my concern is when we started the free education, of course, it was good news to everybody and every Kenyan. And many parents started taking their children to school. But today, many parents are suffering because they cannot pay their school fees. Can the minister come out clearly and tell us what is expected? Because in some of the remote areas, people know that it is free education, but when they come to school, they are frustrated, and it interferes with the performance of the children. And then for these other facilities that is being done, can the minister tell us whether it is done nationally and in all the areas, or it is to specific areas? Because in some of our areas, you go to some schools and you cannot see this. And I want to finish with the school feeding program. I know it is not there, but school feeding program. In some of our remote areas, people don't have enough food, and they depend on that school feeding program in some of the schools, and especially when the students are doing the exams, and a time like this when they are preparing for their final exams. Can the minister tell us the plans they have for all the areas in this country, for all the 47, all the wards, and every school in this country, so that the school feeding program, especially in northern part of Kenya, is well catered for to take care of our students who are sitting for the exams? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the question of free and compulsory basic education, I'm of this view. The Constitution requires us as a government to provide a free primary and secondary education under Article 53, but we have financial limitations. I think the conversation we should be having is how do we ensure that the funding gap is bridged, so that when we request for, say, 78 billion, based on the number and based on the rate that has been calculated, that sum is not slashed either by Parliament or by National Treasury, which then limits the funds that we have. So the solution to this is ring-fencing that budget just to ensure that we meet the requirements of the Constitution of providing free education. It is a challenge because we've not been getting what we request for. So once we agree as a country that we are going to enforce that article and the resources that we request for are ring-fenced for purposes of ensuring that that mandate is undertaken, then we will have complied with the requirements of the law. So we have to work towards ensuring that the resources that are requested are budgeted for, they are allocated. And one of the steps we are taking to ensure that this happens is what I indicated earlier as the verification exercise, so that we have an actual number that is known by each and everyone, that this is the number that we have. So that based on the provisions of the Constitution, based on the numbers that we have in both primary, junior, and secondary, based on the policy of the rate that has been given, it would not be incumbent upon anybody then to slash that budget. With that, as a first step, would be able to resolve a lot of the challenges that we are facing in the sector. But the Constitution requires us to do free education, and that is the legal and constitutional position in Kenya. With respect to the lunch money, the ministry does not provide for lunch. This is an arrangement that is made between the schools and the parents, the 1,000 or the 1,500. That is an arrangement that is made for between those individual schools. And we, as a ministry, do not have a budget to give for lunch, but we do have the budget to do the school feeding program, where I indicated earlier that currently we are doing 2.6 million learners. But the vision for the ministry is to move this number to 10 million by year 2030. That is where we are trying to find out where do we get the resources to ensure that these children who require the school feeding are actually provided for, to avoid a situation where now the school feeding or the lack of food becomes a limitation to achieving the constitutional provision of the free education to our students. Again, it is a question of resources. It's a question of availing the resources. And generally, one of the conversations that we've started having is because we've noticed that there are quite a number of various bursaries, various scholarships, various contributions, various donors in the country. We are required, the Senate did write to us recently to undertake an audit of all the bursaries that we have that support our learners so that we can have perhaps a single pot from where the resources then can be given to ensure that we have completely, comprehensively free education for our children. The funding gap, to Honorable Russell's question, has been there and it's still there.
Kimaye, what's your order? What's your point of order? Minister, sit, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of lunch, which my colleague has just asked about it, the Basic Education Act of 2013 establishes the county education boards. And it is this board that sit and agree on how much each county, they set the ratio, they set how much each county will pay for lunch, these students who are in free day secondary school. But what happens, Mr. Speaker, like the case of my county, they are supposed to pay 1,000 shillings per month for lunch, which translates to 9,000 per year. But now, each specific school will go beyond that 9,000 shillings, which is set by the county education board. And now you get a school, like a specific school, I don't want to mention the name in my constituency. After the 9,000, they have said you need to pay 3,000 per term for bread. So that translates again to 9,000 per year. So a student will stay home because of 9,000 shillings, which is from Kate. So I need a clarification from the minister on whether schools should go and charge extra beyond what the county education board, are said to be the standard amount for that county. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated, the ministry doesn't require that parents pay for lunch. It is optional. So that the teachers or the head teachers should never ever send students home because of the optional arrangement that they have between themselves and the parents. That is the actual and policy position of the ministry. So we will have to deal with that case in situations where, because it's an arrangement that is optional and that is, for lack of a better word, sort of private, so that you cannot use that to send away students because it's not a legal enforceable requirement.
Okay.
The other issues that relating to the question of free versus the quality. Again, as I indicated, because of these gaps and because of the challenges that are there where, for example, students may not come to school all the time because of these limitations, the quality might be affected. And as I've said, to remove or to adequately address that issue, we just need to ensure that the resources that we request for are allocated and they are ring-fenced to ensure that this space is protected. Thank you.
What is it? What is your position? You are asking a follow-up question, Madenge, or you are Honorable Madenge, or it's a point of order, or you don't feel satisfied with the answer? Yes.
Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, it's there. It's just that
The minister has to be, I'm requesting the minister to be very categorical on this issue. One, that it is the ministry's position that any head teacher who sends a child home on account of the parent not having paid for lunch money is violating the policy and the directive of the ministry and the minister and the law. and the action that the ministry will take upon the reporting of such principals and head teachers to the education office. On the same vein is on the issue of the extracurricular activities, where you find children in slums are being sent home on account of not wearing sports shoes and sports uniform on a particular day, school day, where there is a requirement in a school for children to attend class in tracksuits and in sports shoes. Mr. Speaker, we cannot have a policy that provides for free and compulsory basic education, and then along the line, the administrators introduce new barriers to the achievement of a national goal.
You made your point, Raso, the last one.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the question I posed to the minister is, he said in primary school, a learner will be kind of entitled to 1,420 shillings, and in secondary school, 15,042 shillings. Junior. Now, if that is the case, and there's a funding gap, what is the predictable amount that schools will be planning on? Of course, this is what was projected, and reality, that is not what they are likely to get. And on a follow-up, what Honorable Naomi Wako asked about feeding program, particularly in the ASAL areas, where if you don't have feeding program, then most of those learners are not likely to attend the schools. So you really need to tell us something about that, Honorable Cabinet Secretary.
The very last one.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Listening to the minister, there are serious funding gaps in basic education. Could we therefore take it to mean that education actors are going out of their way to find ways of filling this gap? Two, within the policy guidelines, are there provisions where these actors have the discretion of charging extra levies? And Honorable Speaker, we all come from this country, and we are almost all aware that many of our schools charge extra levies. And in meetings where these decisions are made, the ministry is represented, and yet they give the okay for those extra levies to be charged. Now, in this case, how is the ministry enforcing the charging of illegal, or how is it ensuring that institutions don't charge extra levies? Two, one assumption for education to be free is that the Ministry of Education, through the Teacher Service Commission, adequately staff schools, that schools are staffed with adequate teachers. We know that in schools that are up to Form 4, we could only be having a principal sent by the Teacher Service Commission. The rest are teachers on BOM, boards of management, and yet those teachers will require to be remunerated or paid. Now, from which resources, if the schools will not be allowed to charge extra levies so that they can meet the payment of those teachers. So I think, like the minister is saying, that we ring-fence resources. At the same time, the point where we are in, we are not able to meet all the requirements for free basic education in this country. So we must just be alive to that fact. And then now we tell the country that, yes, we have this challenge, and therefore, though the Constitution, the Basic Education Act is saying this, the guidelines are saying this, but the reality and the real issues on ground are not aligned to that. So what is the comment and the view of the Cabinet Secretary in relation to this? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mr. Cabinet Secretary, answer this and then we'll go to the next question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But one fundamental issue you have to take note of as you're answering is that you admit that there are funding gaps. There are funding gaps. And you have not created a provision for the head teachers to fill in that funding gap. Now, how do you expect institutions to move? Because the funding gap is there, the additional resources needed is not there, and you don't allow the principals to charge that funding gap to make it legal, because it's free education, free compulsory primary education. Maybe you need to be very clear about that. And if you need more time, you can then ask the House.
Mr. Speaker, I'll need more time to deal with that, but let me say this. The funding gap is a gap that we continue working with National Treasury to reduce. For example, as I've indicated, for this financial year 25-26, there was a funding gap of 26 billion. We managed to have it reduced by 3 billion during the first supplementary, and we continue working towards ensuring that by the end of the year, we would have reduced it substantially. That's why any levies that any particular head teacher or principal levies on account of the gap, the policy is that it is an illegal levy and it is not allowed. And they cannot use that levy further, for example, to send children home. That's what the official position is. That is the government policy that is subsistent at the moment. But as I've indicated, because this is an issue relating to lack of resources, we need to work towards ensuring that that gap is reduced and the funds for the ministry, once submitted, is ring-fenced so that we avoid situations in future where head teachers or principals are forced to try and fill that gap using their own method. So what I'm trying just to say is that the ministry's position is to work towards, through the government, to reduce that funding gap, and where the resources are being given to the institutions, as I earlier indicated, for them to be used optimally so that we can be able to meet the obligations that are required within the resources that we receive from the government. So that really is the position. What I can undertake here.
Most of the MPs here, if you followed very well, their contributions and their concerns is that gap, the failure to factor in for that gap, either through the parents or any other alternative, does that then compromise on the quality of education in our institutions? And that's one thing they will immediately rise up on a point of order and say, then what happens?
It's
because if it's illegal for them to demand for additional funding or additional, and you are admitting that there is need for additional funding, or are you saying that the additional funding that you need is for additional, more other, for lack of a better word, that still is not quite necessary for the very basic requirements for as a basic education, compulsory, free basic education? Or is that because you're not supplying them with taps or with anything before because that you cannot afford at this stage? Or is it going to compromise on that very, very basic requirement for the children to be not seen as having an inferior quality of education? They will rise upon that. So I might as well guide you on this now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I'm just trying to
If you need
explain
more time, if you need more time,
the position. Perhaps I need more time to respond to that in a global manner.
Absolutely.
So that then we
absolutely.
can
I think,
be able to,
yes.
interrogate that whole space and see, even have an analysis of what does it really mean at the end of the day. But the policy of government as we speak, the levies that are given without the authority of the ministry are illegal and they should not be. That's the position.
Do you still need more
Yes.
time to have a very global answer to it so that you can go back? Yes. And